Hello everybody, this is Johns Hopkins with Baltimore Heritage, and we're back with another of our 5-Minute Histories videos. And today I'm on Fayette Street, right near Utah, in the heart of the Bromo-Seltzer Art and Entertainment District. And behind me is the Everyman Theater. Everyman has been here since 2013. The theater has been here since 1911, although with a brief stint in the 1930s as a parking garage, but we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. Today we're going to talk about the Everyman, but let's start with a word about the building. Again, it was built in 1911 as the Empire Theater, and it showed vaudeville acts. It was a big theater. It had 2,200 seats, a pool hall, and a rat skeller in the basement. If you were going to a show back then, you might be able to see acrobatic shows, which they called alley-oops, with performers like the Nelson family, or a woman named Millie Capel, who billed herself as a European equestrian. You could also see Yiddish theater, some of the early greats like Joseph Buloff and Celia Adler, or you could see boxing matches. They had quite an array of stuff going on. In 1913, it got a little edgier. One thing it did was put up a sign called the Kicking Lady that was kind of risque. It attracted the ire of a group called the Society for the Suppression of Vice, but the powers that be felt it was tame enough to keep. That is the sign. And later in 1913, the theater changed its name to the Palace Theater. By the 1930s, during the Great Depression, the Palace was struggling. It started to show movies to try to increase income, but by 1937 the building kind of gave up the arts and got turned into a parking garage. But I think the building didn't want to be a parking garage. It wanted to be a theater. And it got its savior in 1947 with a family called the Rappaports. They had been longtime managers of the Hippodrome Theater just across the street, and they purchased the garage and then brought on probably the preeminent movie house architect of the day, a gentleman named John Zink. And with Zink in charge, they turned the garage back into a theater. The first show there, if you're curious, was It's a Wonderful Life, with Jimmy Stewart, the lead actor, and Frank Copra, the director, in the audience. Over the years, you could have seen other shows like Joan of Arc with Ingrid Bergman. You could have seen the Maryland premiere of Ben-Hur or Porgy and Bess. Or you could have seen, before he became a politician, Arnold Schwarzenegger in The Running Man. But maybe the most notable show occurred on September 25th, 1953. It was a show called I, the Jury, which was a crime thriller. And the show was notable not so much for the movie itself, but for what happened in the lobby. One person who was in the audience then was a guy named John Johnson. He was a bank robber and was on the FBI's 10 most wanted list. In the middle of the movie, he decided to go make a phone call from the payphone, but the FBI were on to him. They tracked the call, and within minutes, 4 FBI agents came bursting through the lobby doors. A gunfight ensued, and both Johnson and one of the agents were killed. That was crazy. Maybe equally crazy was the folks watching the movie had no idea. When the movie ended, they went out the door in the rear, like they always did, and found out about what happened in the lobby by reading the papers the next day. They apparently thought that the real gunfire in the lobby was part of the soundtrack to the movie. But despite bank robbers and gun shootouts, the Town Theater, as it was called then, had a good long run up until about 1990, when it went dark and sat vacant until Everyman came along in 2013. So let's say a word about Everyman. It was founded in 1990 by a gentleman named Vince Lancisi. Started out in St. John's Church in Charles Village and bopped around doing shows at the Vagabond Theater, Theater Project, even classrooms at Micah. For a long time, their home was the former famous ballroom on Charles Street, just a few doors up from the Charles Theater. And that was a great space in many ways for them, except maybe for space. They had only one theater, so they couldn't practice the next show when the current show was going on. The set design shop was so small, it could only turn out a limited number of new sets, really crimping their schedule. And they were, luckily for them, selling out a lot of their shows, but there was really no room to expand. The old town theater here offered solutions to many of those problems. It had a big main theater, 250 seats, space for a second theater or a practice space, and the set design shop was adequate enough that those folks could do what they do best. If you're curious, the first show here was in 2013, was August, Osage County, and over the years you could have seen classics like Death of a Salesman and A Streetcar Named Desire, but you could also see more avant shows, most recently a show called Queen's Girl, Black in the Green City. And if you're following along real time, the show that still has a few more weeks to go is called Primary Trust. It got the nod from the New York Times critics. And if you time it right, you can take advantage of Everyman's pay what you choose ticket pricing, where at least a few seats for every show are at your own discretion, making sure that theater is available to everyone. Thanks so much, and come on down. We'll see you next time.